If Rome hadn't fallen, what would the world look like today? In part 1, we imagined how Rome's survival could have reshaped culture, language, and global governance. But now, let's dig deeper. How would Rome's uninterrupted rise have changed technology, warfare, and the very map of the world? Historian Edward Gibbon, in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, argued that Rome's collapse stalled human progress for centuries. Imagine if that collapse never happened. By 1000 AD, Roman engineers, already masters of aqueducts and concrete, might have pioneered steam power. According to a 2016 article in the Journal of Roman Studies, hero of Alexandria's early steam device, the Aeolipile, could have become more than a novelty. In a Rome that never fell, industrialization might have begun a millennium earlier, with steam-driven ships crossing the Atlantic centuries before Columbus. That raises the question, why didn't the Romans adopt steam power or other labor-saving technologies more widely? Well, according to classics professor Thomas Issanen, the answer lies in the empire's vast size and stability. As long as Rome's borders remained secure, its diverse peoples enjoyed peace and prosperity, which discouraged innovation. However, in a Rome that never falls, we might imagine border conflicts continuing to push the frontiers further and further. Perhaps in the 10th or 11th century, pressure from a resurgent Persia forces the Eastern Emperor to commission new weapons and fortifications. This could spark an arms race, pushing the empire to adopt superior technologies, potentially starting with gunpowder. In fact, according to historian Valerie J. Sharp, there's evidence that Roman rulers considered adopting gunpowder weapons, but ultimately rejected them as too barbaric. Imagine if they had chosen otherwise. A Rome that adopted gunpowder early might have used cannons to keep its borders secure, driving technological development and expansion. By 1500, instead of European kingdoms locked in constant warfare, we might see a vast, gunpowder-wielding Roman realm stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. We can thank China for its role in this potential history because it was Chinese silk that flowed into Roman markets, fueling the empire's growth. But what if Rome had developed vertically integrated silk production within its own borders? According to Italian historian Andrea De Roberts, all the technologies needed for large-scale silk making existed in late antiquity, but while silk forms had been brought to the empire from China, they never took hold. If silk production became economically viable in Rome, it could have facilitated trade throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. It could have also provided raw materials to fuel the Roman textile industry, potentially leading to economic growth and prosperity, shaping the trajectory of the empire. And speaking of trade, let's explore a monumental project that could have united the known world, a pre-Columbian transatlantic bridge. Let's dive into the fascinating details of this audacious plan. Rome's legions were unmatched in discipline and logistics. Archaeologist Adrian Goldsworthy notes that their military structure was so advanced that modern armies still borrow tactics from them. If Rome endured, it's possible that by 1500, the empire would stretch into the Americas. Imagine Roman galleons with steel armor and gunpowder adopted far earlier, meeting native civilizations. Instead of European colonization, we might speak of Roman colonies of the New World. But could a continuous Roman Empire really span the Atlantic? Well, let's consider this. The Romans built roads 800 miles through hostile terrain and deserts. They bridged rivers twice as wide as the Strait of Dover. Plus, their concrete and aqueducts outlasted many ancient structures. Now, you might think that a bridge would be a simpler feat. Well, according to engineering historian David Macaulay, the Romans did ponder such a project. With enough manpower, resources, and know-how, they could have done it, and the benefits would be enormous. The bridge could connect Rome to the Americas, creating new trade routes and cultural exchanges. It could also serve as a defensive barrier against potential threats. Now, the logistics of building such a structure would be daunting, but in a Rome that never fell, where the concept of world domination was commonplace, it might just be possible. The idea of a pre-Columbian transatlantic bridge between Rome and the Americas sounds like a fantastical tale, but it reflects the incredible engineering feats the Romans accomplished. Who knows? In another timeline, it might have been a reality. Instead of the Dark Ages, we might have experienced the Lighten Age. The European Renaissance of the 15th century drew heavily on rediscovered Roman texts. But what if Rome had preserved and expanded that knowledge? Cambridge scholar Mary Beard argues that Rome's libraries and archives were vast. If intact, they could have nurtured a continuous scientific tradition. By 1200, instead of 1600, humanity might already have telescopes, printing presses, and universities teaching advanced mathematics. The Industrial Revolution might have erupted 600 years earlier. But for this to happen, Rome would need to adapt to new ideas. Historian Peter Heather argues that imperial sclerosis prevented Rome from becoming a meritocracy. To embrace new knowledge, Rome would need to evolve, valuing education and intellect over wealth and status. Without a collapse to jolt it out of its complacency, would the empire ever change? Well, let's imagine that a series of enlightened emperors champions learning and innovation. By 1000, Rome becomes a hub of scientific research, perhaps even developing universities to train scholars. Its libraries, instead of being sacked, become repositories of cutting-edge research. By 1200, the empire boasts observatories, dissecting anatomical theaters, and printing presses churning out books in multiple languages. Latin was already the administrative language across Europe. In a never-fallen Rome, it might have become today's universal tongue, eliminating language barriers in science, trade, and diplomacy. Imagine the United Nations not as a modern invention, but as an institution formed in the 9th century under Roman authority, a council of provinces guided by Roman law. This isn't speculation alone. A 2020 History Today article suggests Rome had already laid the groundwork for international governance. For this to fully manifest, though, Latin would need to evolve into a common vernacular. Imagine a Latin spoken in the year 2025, enriched by the dialects of conquered peoples, yet standardized by centuries of imperial rule. It could sound quite different from the Latin of Cicero, incorporating elements of Greek, Arabic, Persian, and various Native American languages. Picture diplomats speaking this hybrid Latin, negotiating trade deals and treaties across the globe. But how would such a diverse empire manage its internal affairs? Well, if Rome never fell, its legal system would likely have continued to develop, perhaps culminating in a sophisticated legal code. In fact, a 2021 book, A History of the World in 100 Laws, argues that Roman law formed the foundation of modern legal systems. Imagine a Roman legal tradition refined over 2 millennia, shaped by diverse cultures, yet cohesive under the authority of a world empire. Lawyers versed in this tradition might argue cases before courts, ensuring justice and order across the known world. The rise of Christianity reshaped Rome, but in a surviving empire, religion might have evolved differently. Instead of centuries of conflict between church and state, we might see a fusion, a Roman Christian state church guiding technological and social reforms. Cultural traditions like gladiatorial games could have vanished earlier, replaced by sophisticated theaters, global art exchanges, and perhaps even Roman versions of Olympic-style sporting federations. But will this church be tolerant of other faiths? Will it actively spread Christianity or coexist with paganism and other religions? And how will this influence the development of technology and society? Let's explore these questions further. Imagine a Roman emperor in the 9th century embracing a new faith. He commissions grand churches and encouraged the clergy to pursue education and scholarship. Monasteries become centers of learning, preserving ancient texts and producing illuminated manuscripts. Over time, the clergy, educated in Roman law and tradition, become a powerful force, advising emperors on policy and administering justice. But how will this theocracy deal with religious minorities? Well, it depends on the nature of this new faith. Will it be exclusive, demanding uniformity and persecuting non-believers? Or will it be inclusive, accepting other religions as part of a broader Christian worldview? In either case, the empire's diversity could foster a unique blend of Roman law, tradition, and theology. By 1200, this Christianized Rome could resemble a medieval theocracy, shaping the world in unexpected ways. So what would the year 2025 look like in this alternate world? Instead of fragmented nation-states, we might live under a unified Res Publica Mundi, a world republic. Cities like Rome, Constantinople, and Londinium might rival futuristic metropolises. Flying machines derived from Leonardo da Vinci's visions, but built in the 1400s, could dominate our skies today. And instead of space programs led by the US or USSR, the Imperium Romanum Spatialis could already have colonies on Mars. But will this world be utopian? Well, it depends on the role of the ruler. Imagine an enlightened despot, a Roman Caesar who rules with wisdom and benevolence, overseeing a golden age of prosperity and cultural achievement. His subjects enjoy advanced technology, sophisticated art, and a stable government that ensures peace and justice. But how will this ruler manage such a vast and diverse empire? Well, he could rely on a sophisticated bureaucracy, a vast network of officials and administrators who implement his policies and maintain order. In fact, historians argue that Rome's civil service was highly efficient, effectively managing the empire's finances and infrastructure. But even under the best of circumstances, this world would still face challenges. Natural disasters, economic crises, and rebellions could threaten stability. Plus, will this empire resist outside threats like nomadic invasions or new world powers? Only time will tell. From technology to empire, the Rome that never fell could have made our world unrecognizable. But how sustainable would that empire really be? Could one state rule for over 2 millennia without tearing itself apart?